G'day guys, my name is Caleb, otherwise known as the Critic Kebab, and today we're going to be reviewing Toy Story 4. Toy Story 4, released in June of 2019, once again stars Tom Hanks and Tim Allen and is the continuation of one of the most consistent film franchises of all time. After Andy passes on his beloved toys to Bonnie, Woody, Buzz and the gang are thrust into new adventures. But when Bonnie creates an all-new toy at kindergarten called Forky, the toys must do everything possible to keep Forky from escaping and returning to where he thinks he belongs, the trash. If you're new to the channel, I review movies with no spoilers first. Then, after I've given my grade, I get into my spoiler chat, where I discuss my thoughts on some of the spoiler moments. So if you haven't seen the movie yet, don't worry, there'll be no spoilers just yet. Now, it's very important to know that the Toy Story franchise is my most beloved set of movies, and I absolutely adore these characters. Throughout my childhood, I watched and rewatched the Toy Story movies constantly. I even watched the old Buzz Lightyear or Star Command cartoon. Hit the like button if you remember that old show. But it's safe to say that I've grown up with these beloved characters like many other people around the world. So, after Toy Story 3, which was a perfect conclusion to a perfect trilogy, I was extremely satisfied. Coming into this movie, I was terrified, because even if the movie was good, anything less than great would have been a disappointment, because the first three are so incredible. Well, I'm so happy to report that I'm not disappointed. So, let's start with the positives. First of all, the animation is spectacular. Pixar have crafted once again an incredibly photorealistic and stunning looking film that is beautiful to look at. Andrew Stanton and Stephen Folsom wrote the screenplay for this film. And just like every other movie, the story is the most important part, and here they fully delivered. The vast majority of people, including myself, were skeptical about a fourth Toy Story movie. But once you see this movie, you can't imagine the saga without it. The narrative specifically focuses on Woody and concentrates on giving him a fulfilling and satisfying character arc, which they succeed at. Toy Story 3 has a great and powerful ending, but it's the conclusion of the relationship between Andy and Woody, and this movie shows that there's more after that for Woody. Bonnie is not the same kid as Andy, so what will Woody do when he's not the top dog this time around? The plot really dives into this dilemma, and it's strengthened when Woody is joined by lost toy Bo Peep, voiced by Annie Potts. Bo Peep was a character in the first two Toy Stories that was designed as a supporting character that also had a fun, flirtatious relationship with Woody. However, in this film, she is promoted to being one of the main characters. They fully fleshed her character out and made her incredibly interesting, because not only is she badass and entertaining, but she's also layered and complex. She has evolved into an independent toy that survives in this big world, and the back and forth between her and Woody was fascinating. The rest of the gang returns, including Jessie, Rex, the Potato Heads, and of course Buzz Lightyear. And what they decided to do with Buzz this time was super funny and clever. I won't say what it was, but they did a great job creating story from it. Speaking of funny, this is definitely the most humorous movie in the franchise. There are tons of great jokes, and they're delivered by fantastic supporting characters. Most notably, Keanu Reeves as Duke Kaboom, Canada's greatest stuntman. This was a brilliant character that was sympathetic straight away, and he had plenty of great moments. Jordan Peele and Keegan-Michael play Bunny and Ducky, these two plush toys, and they had some great laugh out loud moments. And of course, the new addition Forky is voiced by Tony Hale. Forky was a very interesting character that was silly, sympathetic, but most importantly, endearing. And another huge positive for me were the antagonists in this film. The Toy Story movies have always had great antagonists, but what they decided to do in this movie was incredibly unexpected, truly heartfelt, and menacing. Randy Newman, who composed and conducted the music, also did an excellent job. The music is amazing. As for issues, there are no major problems, but for me personally, I would have liked to have seen more scenes between Woody and Buzz. These two have always been the focal point of this franchise, But Woody is and always has been the anchor of the story. So focusing on him specifically wasn't a major downfall in the storytelling. And my other critique is because there is such a large ensemble, some of our veteran characters such as Jesse, Slinky Dog, Bullseye get relegated in this story, favouring the new characters. Nothing with the new characters was bad, but I just felt that sometimes the original gang were an afterthought. But these are very minor critiques in what is an exceptional movie, and Josh Cooley expertly directed this film and brought the magic once again. Somehow Disney and Pixar have hit another home run, and Toy Story 4 does not disappoint. The characters have gone on another terrific adventure that people of all ages will enjoy. There is content that adults will really connect with, and stuff children will find really amusing. The themes and drama that is explored is complex, but it's brilliantly depicted through these fun-loving toys. I laughed, I cried, I had a fun time start to finish, and this is a movie that definitely deserves to exist. Toy Story 4 will receive an A, and this is a must-see movie. This story has a trajectory and knows what it wants to accomplish, and I'm so satisfied we have got another great entry in what might be a perfect saga. Also, make sure you stay until the very end of the credits. There's no sort of post-credit scene or anything, but there's a payoff to a very specific joke from the movie that I found immense enjoyment in. Well, those are my spoiler-free thoughts on the movie. Now, if you have seen the movie, make sure you stick around because now I'm going to get into my spoiler chat, where I discuss some of my thoughts on some of the spoilery moments in the movie. But if you haven't seen it yet, of course, click off this video now. So the first thing that I want to talk about in my spoiler chat is a little fun comparison that I found between Toy Story 1 and obviously Toy Story 4, was that in Toy Story 1, when obviously Buzz Lightyear is first introduced, he's the coolest toy ever, and he's advertised as such. Whereas in Toy Story 4, we get a brand new toy that kind of comes in, and it's like the worst toy ever, because it's essentially made from trash in Forky. So I thought that was just a fun little comparison between Toy Story 1 and Toy Story 4. This idea of having a brilliant, fantastic, awesome new toy in Toy Story 1, and then having literal trash as a new toy in Toy Story 4. Whilst we're on the topic of Forky, I might also make a comment on the last scene where Forky comes in contact with that new toy that Bonnie has created out of the knife and all those other pieces, and it's like a female counterpart to Forky. I love that very brief scene that those two characters had, and then at the end where she's like, you know, why am I alive? And Forky just responds with, I don't know. This was the perfect response to this question that many of the fans have been asking for several years now about how does the rules work, how do these toys come to life, and especially how does Forky come to life. And this was just kind of a tongue-in-cheek way of the filmmakers being like, just go along with it, don't really get too hung up on it. So I thought that was a funny way to kind of wrap up this movie. But let's now jump back to the very beginning of the movie, in that opening sequence between the toys trying to rescue RC from that thunderstorm. I thought this was an incredible opening sequence. When it first started, and it was like 9 years ago, I'm like, oh, we're going back to with Andy and all that type of stuff. And this was just a really thrilling sequence because obviously RC is one of those characters that was obviously missing in Toy Story 3. But just to see the toys working together and working in a very efficient way to get RC out of the thunderstorm, it looked incredibly photorealistic. Just the way the lighting was used, obviously the music, all of it came together. It was a really intense sequence. And then obviously this is where Bo Peep obviously is then taken away by this other parent that has come through to collect it. And we have that really heartbreaking and touching scene between Bo Peep and Woody underneath the car in the box. And I absolutely this really tugged at my heartstrings. It was a fantastic way to start the movie. And it really sets up the climax of the movie towards the very end, which we'll get to in a moment. But I thought this was a fantastic way to start this movie, set up the relationship between Woody and Bo Peep, but really throw us onto this trajectory of this story that will be happening between these two characters. And I thought it was a great way to start the movie. But of course, now that Woody belongs to Bonnie, she's playing with all the toys and creating all her own adventures. But unfortunately, Woody is not the favorite toy anymore. I thought this was a kind of a fun spin. When we first open up, he's kind of trying to keep everyone in check, even though he's not really in charge because Dolly is. And him not being selected 3 times in the week, I thought it was pretty funny, and it was just really amusing seeing Woody take things into his own hands, going to kindergarten to kind of be a buddy for Bonnie, and then obviously him being the one that is responsible for the creation of Forky. I thought this was a really fun way to kind of have him create the plot, so to speak, because his actions have consequences. And that's what you want out of a story with characters that are interesting. And I thought him taking on the responsibility of being the one that had to look after Forky because he was essentially the one that created him, I thought was very intelligent filmmaking, and I thought it was a very good way of kind of, again, propelling us into this plot that threw us into this adventure. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about is the antagonist in this film. And of course, that's when we get to the antique shop and we're introduced to those creepy ventriloquist dolls and Gabby. I thought what they did with this character was fantastic because, as I said before, the first 3 Toy Story movies obviously have Sid, Stinky Pete, and Lotso, and those were 3 very complex and motivated antagonists, whereas in this film, she has a very good motivation, Gabby, but it's not in a very evil way. It's in a way that kind of, she wants us to be loved and respected like any other toy that's been loved. And I thought this was a very unexpected twist to kind of implement with this character. Instead of her just being a very one-dimensional bad guy that just wanted to steal Woody's voice box, it was for a very motivated and kind of an interesting and sympathetic reason. So I thought what they did with this and flipping it on its head, I thought was fantastic. But I have to say that one of the most intense sequences in this film was when Woody was going through the park and when he finally meets back up with Bo Peep. That moment where that little kid picks up the 2 toys and they come face to face, but because there's a kid right there, they have to remain in toy form. It's one of those moments where you just your jaw just drops and you're like, oh, say something. But obviously they can't, and this was a great sequence, and I absolutely love when they obviously get laid down, back down on the ground, and Woody gets up to kind of react, and Bo Peep was just like, no, stay down, wait for it, now let's go. And then the way they embrace later on and meet back up with Bo Peep's sheep and all that type of stuff, I thought was fantastic. It was a brilliant reunion between these 2 characters that clearly have some sort of affection towards each other, but they were kind of just trying to hide it at the last minute sort of thing. It was a great way to kind of bring these characters back together, and I absolutely loved it. Later on, once our characters have devised the plan, they obviously decide to go to meet Duke Kaboom, and I absolutely love this character. His opening scene where he kind of has that backstory and reveals how he was disowned by his owner who got rid of him because of false advertising essentially, I thought was hilarious. The way his voice just worked, it was so funny. Keanu Reeves was a perfect choice for this character, and I absolutely loved all the dynamics that he had with all the characters, and Duke Kaboom was a brilliant character, and I found so much enjoyment watching him on screen. So when the characters are finally assembled to execute the plan, it goes horribly wrong. And this was another scene that was incredibly, strenuous, left me on the edge of my seat. Obviously when Duke fails the jump landing, the cat gets involved, all that sort of stuff I thought was incredibly tense, incredibly suspenseful, and then when Woody's voice box slowly starts getting pulled out of him and you start seeing his stuffing inside, that was a really intense moment, and I thought it was a great sequence that kind of really put the tension at its max. And obviously the plan completely fails. Forky is still captured, and obviously this then leads into that scene between Woody and Bo Peep, where they have that confrontation about where their loyalties lie and their kind of philosophies on life and what it means to be a toy. This was a really profound scene because it really showcased where Woody was at an emotional level, because it had only really been teased up until this point, But obviously Woody has obviously tried to be loyal to Bonnie. This is where he thinks his purpose is. But like he says to Bo, he doesn't really feel like he has a purpose anymore. Because he obviously, when he was with Andy, he went throughout Andy as he grew up, and then he made it to college and he moved on with his life. And for Woody, that was his destiny fulfilled. And now that he's been passed on to Bonnie and he's not really receiving the same sort of treatment, this kind of leaves him in this mindset of, what is my purpose in life? And I feel like him trying to make it with Bonnie, that's all he has left. And I thought this was a really heartbreaking scene to see Woody in this kind of dilemma that he really doesn't know what to do with his life because his purpose has essentially been fulfilled. And I thought the way that Bo Peep reacted to it was very truthful. This is obviously then when Woody gets his voice box removed and transferred over to Gabby Gabby, and she has this last-ditch effort to try and be loved and be taken in by Harmony, that little girl from the antique store. And the moment where Harmony picks up Gabby Gabby and has that face-to-face and then just drops her back in the box and says, I don't really want the toy. This was a truly heartbreaking scene. It really was a gut punch to you, and it was like, oh, damn, that really does suck, because this is all that Gabby Gabby has wanted, is to be loved and wanted to be cared for and wanted to interact and have those experiences that Woody had when he was growing up with Andy. And just to see this was truly heartbreaking, even though she was the antagonist for a majority of this film. Anyway, this obviously then leads into the later scene where Gabby Gabby finds that little girl, who's crying and lost in the carnival, and that's when she has that decision. I think I need to go again and be there for this girl. And I thought it was very emotionally satisfying and very fulfilling to see her then get adopted by that little girl, her then find her parents and kind of go off and be adopted and now be loved by this young little girl. So her little character arc I thought was fantastic and really satisfying. And then obviously this then drives us in to the whole get back to the car with Bonnie and stuff with the toys. And this final sequence I found so much enjoyment in. We have that brilliant moment where Duke Kaboom drives off and makes that jump, and we have the fireworks going off in the background. He does his poses. The sound design and the dialogue in this was fantastic. I absolutely loved it. And then as he's going through, he just crashes and just smacks his head on the target that he was going for. So hilarious. I laughed out loud so much during this part. And then obviously this then leads into when the car is eventually driving its way into the carnival and the police car rocks up behind him, and we have that moment where the joke of Dad going to jail is paid off. That was hilarious. I absolutely love that joke. All the type of stuff was super funny, and then it obviously crescendos into this emotional, really hard-hitting scene between Woody, Buzz, and Bo Peep, and the ending really got to me. Firstly, I just want to quickly mention that I was extremely proud of Woody when he does hand over the sheriff badge to Jesse. That was a little neat little character moment, showcasing that he has moving on and that he is passing the mantle of who's in charge to Jesse. I thought this was a great moment. But the emotional climax of this scene was between Woody and Bo Peep, and I absolutely loved this scene because it was expertly directed by Josh Cooley. Just the way the camera was framed, the way it was shot, and the camera angles and all that sort of stuff, because it was done identical, or very similar at least, to the opening sequence with Woody and Bo Peep in the box underneath the car. The way Woody kind of puts his hands over the box was the same way that he put his hands over the side of the railing and all that sort of stuff. It was shot the exact same way, and it came back to that point of realization where in the opening sequence, Woody chose Andy over Bo Peep because that's where his loyalty lied, that's where his responsibility had lied. And then at the end of the movie, it comes back to that thing where he has decided that he has fulfilled his purpose and that he has decided to choose a life of his own and that he completely has earned the right to have his own happiness and dictate where he wants to go in life. And obviously this time, instead of choosing his responsibility, he decides to choose a life of his own and go with Bo Peep and embrace his happiness. And I thought this was a fantastic way, and the goodbye between all of our original gang and then obviously Woody and Buzz was so heartbreaking, so emotionally fulfilling, and super satisfying to see these two characters that originally did not get along at all in the first Toy Story movie have come through these many years, have become amazing friends and have a great respect for each other. And I love the moment where Buzz said, you know, she's going to be okay. Bonnie is going to be okay. Kind of giving him the respect and the, you know, wishing him on to make this decision. And I thought it was a great character moment for both Buzz and for Woody. And the way they completed the movie with Buzz saying to infinity and Woody completing it with saying and beyond, I thought was a brilliant way to conclude this franchise. And I don't think this will be the conclusion of stories within the Toy Story universe, but I think it is the best option for them to conclude this franchise with these characters like Woody and Buzz and the gang that we're so familiar with. I thought this was a brilliant conclusion to this saga that has had great installments all the way through, had great character moments, had great stories, and an adventure that has been so impactful on so many people's lives, including my own. And I am so satisfied and so happy that they absolutely stuck the landing and that Woody has kind of landed in this situation where he can embrace his happiness and now go on and, you know, do whatever he wants in life and spend his time with Bo Peep. So I thought this was a great ending, and I'm, like I said, super satisfied. Those are my thoughts on Toy Story 4. Now, I would love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. Did you love it as much as I did? What's your favourite Toy Story movie in the franchise? 1 through 4, what's your preferred? I would love to hear it down in the comments below. Whilst you're down there, make sure you hit that like button if you did enjoy this review. And of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure you go down and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of my upcoming content. Like always, I just say thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And I'll see you in another video.